Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know the best leaders are lifetime learners. Thank you guys for showing up today. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of leadership and PR. That is storytelling, and it is also a way of showing your expertise and how you stand out as a leader in your genre, in your profession, in whatever space it is that you occupy. How do you show leadership? How do you show up? And today I get to talk to someone. Oh my God, I just love her. She's now an author, but she's a mother. But when I met her, it was a long time ago, y'all. It was like before the wrinkles, it was before the kids, it was before life did a number on us. And what you know for sure is that life teaches us lessons. And today I get to bring her back as an author, a mom, an educator, a wife. So don't be looking, y'all. Don't be looking. And just an amazing friend. Like adulting with people that you grew up with is incredible. So without further ado, I want you to meet Miss Tene Manning. Hey, girl. Hey.
It is awesome, isn't it? Just to see us all flourishing, thriving.
Grown, bill paying, that whole thing.
Yeah, that part too. That part too. Let's not talk about that.
Well,
This
listen, I definitely want to get quickly into what you're doing because it is very timely that you have published this book and that you did it under a different name. So let's start with what your original name was, why you went ahead and changed your name, and how did you decide to become an author? Because it's not easy. It's not easy.
it's not. And so really I didn't really change my name. I just write my children's books under a pseudonym. So I was thinking just because I wanted to do this really just because it was kind of like a passion project of mine. But I wanted to do it to kind of honor the people in my family. So Thelma is my father's mother, and Elizabeth is my mother's mother. And so my, maternal and paternal grandmothers, because they were my first storytellers. And so this is kind of like an ode to them, to honor them and to just show love for them because I just love them and miss them so much. I miss their stories because they were some interesting stories. And you know how grandmothers do, they love telling stories, they love sharing the past. And I think they use it just to give you perspective, right? And to help you guide you in your future. So yeah, that's where Thelma Elizabeth comes from. So my name is Tene Manning. But yeah, Thelma Elizabeth is a pseudonym that I decided to write my children's books under.
I love how you are honoring them and the way that you're doing it and the reason that you are doing it. The term storyteller seems to be thrown around a lot. It for us in PR, it is how you tell a story to connect with your target audience. Sometimes people don't even know who their target audience is. But for us, it's really a way of getting people to know, like, and trust us or our clients. It's a way to really connect, to get things to resonate, to get people to a call to action, to get them to do something. Why did you decide to tell this story at this time?
So the thing is, I wrote this in 2011. So it's not even something that I wrote recently, but it still applies. And it applied years and decades, before. But I think it was just something that struck a nerve with me because my daughter, while she was coloring, um, she was making, portraits and pictures of her family and herself. And she decided to ask the question. You know how children do. They ask you very insightful and thoughtful questions, not even with the intention, but it's because it's showing you how they're deeper thinking, right? They're deeper learning. And so my daughter was asking, Mom, what is God's favorite color? And I'm like, where did that come from? Number one. And number two, how did she even think that deep into what would God's favorite color be? And so it just got the wheels turning. I wasn't even thinking about writing children's book to begin with, right? But I remember it kind of started with my mom badgering me about when your children ask you these interesting questions, when you have these interesting conversations, write them down because you're going to want to remember this. You're going to want to come back to this, right? And so it kind of started from there. So when she asked me this question, I was like, God, I got to write that down. And then write that down turned into a children's book. And then it went from, man, I got to write some other stuff because, children, how that show Children Say the Darndest Things is true, right? And you want to be able to recall those stories and be able to share those stories. And so this is kind of like me sharing these stories with the rest of the world. And what I really want this book to be is the catalyst for those conversations with our young learners about colorism, because it is still an issue, right? Racism is still an issue. And I'm seeing that it's becoming more and more of a deeper conversation, especially because we have so many different platforms to connect with each other, right? So I think that this is a better way of addressing it with the little ones before they start jumping into social media and letting social media really shape and determine what they think of color. And so this was kind of like how it became something more than just a story from my children. And I really want it to be a focus, um, yeah, for parents to have these conversations early.
I know that you wrote this book from a perspective of a highly melanated girl, but after I read it, I realized that it's actually something that anybody, listen to me, y'all, anybody can use to help have conversations with their children, because racism and colorism is not something that just involves us, especially for those that consider themselves allies, right? Sometimes you have a hard time saying, I don't know how to have these conversations. Hey, Tanya, can you help me? Or hey, Tene, can you help me? This is a great tool for just about anyone. Did you think about that when you were writing this book?
Definitely. Definitely. And that's why you see the family, even the family dynamic with the mom and dad. And then you have a snapshot of the family portraits in the background of different shades. Um, it's always been an issue, right? So one thing that I've noticed that it goes beyond, African Americans. It goes beyond African people, period. It goes beyond like when you talk to people of, Hispanic descent, of Asian descent, they deal with colorism, right? Even in India, the lighter you are, the closer you are to God. And we think it's just our culture, but it really, my goal is eventually for it to be translated into different languages, in cultures where it really hits home. And so no, that is not by mistake. That is kind of how this book started to take shape and evolve. Since I wrote it in 2011, I've had to edit and then add a little bit more to it because I started thinking about how deep this really goes. So no, that was not by mistake. You're so right.
So I love this part where it says, and let me let y'all know, I got it. Okay. I always got me a good little copy, have my daughter read it, and I have one for the audience. So pay attention afterwards. I'm going to have an opportunity for you to get one. But I love the part, mommy. Is that why you love blue so much? Because you think blue could be God's favorite color too? I was like, ooh, let me answer. Because I'm a Zeta and I love blue and white, and that's God's favorite color. No, I'm not going to do that to y'all. But the way that you answer some of these questions in here are very innocent. They're
Yeah.
not in a way that actually leads to an answer. It leads to
Right.
thinking. I think we've
Right.
come into a place in society where people forget to teach our young people how to think. It's
Right.
almost like them taking, wanting to take the study of Black history or ethnic studies out of school. They don't want us to think, because no one's saying think Black is the best. No one's saying think Asian is the best. No one's saying think Mexican is the best. They're saying, let me give you some information and I'm going to help you process it, but I
Right.
want you to think about it. How are you, how did you put this together in a way that does not actually give an answer, but it teaches kids to think and process and come up with their own solutions and
So
conclusions?
I think that's the educator in me because we're always thinking about deeper and higher learning, right? So when you're reading the book, you're reading about really all the different wonders of the world, all the things that God has created. If you believe in God, you believe that He's created everything on this planet. Um, so when you're thinking about that, you're thinking even beyond just, the plants and the trees and the animals. You're also thinking about, well, if he created all of these things and they're all so many different, wonderful, beautiful colors, then I'm not a mistake. I want them to take that thinking beyond what they're reading and looking at the color of their own skin and understanding that the color of their own skin is not a mistake. It is a beautiful shade that he created. And there is nothing that could take that away from you. There is nothing that can say, or there's no one that can say and determine whether or not your skin is beautiful, but you, because you were created in his image, his shape, right? His divine being. So you're just really just a reflection of his power.
I love that. I want you to reflect back, for me, on your childhood. Talk
Right.
about where you grew up and kind of your first moments that you can remember where you started questioning your skin tone and what that actually meant for you.
Okay. So you and I both grew up in the Bay Area in San Jose. Bay Area is a huge melting pot, but it's not without, the issues of racism, right? Even though you have people from all walks of life, different colors, different ethnicities, cultures. But I remember really things started to come into question for me when I was attending a Christian school, Christian private school. And I remember our third grade teacher, because we did not get, even though it was already established as a holiday, but for some reason the school decided that it wasn't going to be recognized as a holiday, and that was Martin Luther King's Day. And we decided as a family that we were going to take that day off, right? My parents had the day off. They were like, "You're not going to school. We're going to go and we're going to celebrate." And I remember coming in the next day, and it must have been a decision that not just my family made, but the majority of the African American students in my class made. So none of us were there. And so the teacher, who was white, decided to point out how quiet and peaceful class was without us there. And I'm like, whoa.
What?
Like even at that age, you're kind of like, that didn't sound right. And then that's when
What?
things started. Yeah, I'll never forget them. I'll never forget that comment. And I have taken that with me. I mean, look at I'm in my 40s and I'm still,
Mad
it's
about it.
affects me. Right. Right. And I just remember just I don't know what it was about that third grade class, but I remember another boy said that, white people are better than black people because black people used to be slaves. And we went to the same teacher and he said, "Well, did he hurt you? Did he physically touch you?" And it was like three of us and we said no. And he said, "Well, then go sit down." I'm like, "Okay." All right. I don't know what's going on here, but that's when I started to figure out that there was something different. And apparently, some people perceived my skin color as a negative thing, right? And then I have all different types of shades in my family. And I remember hearing negative, references to the darker skinned family members as blackie or darkies. And I just remember feeling like none of this sounds right because I love everybody in my family. I love every shade and I have every shade in my family. I mean, it runs the gamut. So I just didn't understand why people were pointing out differences as a kid. And it just puzzled me why this was even a conversation.
Okay, but now you do. So I want you to take me as this woman, Tene. Talk to me about looking back at that and recognizing if it came to me or you in a job, you might get the job. And I don't think there's
Right.
still a lot of people that understand that. Like, I understand that.
Right.
You understand that. Explain it to
Right.
them and why this is important.
It's important because people still use that judgment, right? That very ignorant way of thinking about lighter skin, fairer skin being the more attractive. And we even see it even in entertainment, right? When we talk about how the majority of those lead roles at one point for any person of color went to someone who was closer to fair skin or someone who could almost pass, right? So even when we talk about some of the movies we've watched and grew up on, Imitation of Life was one of those really iconic films because it addressed it in a way that people really never thought about it. And we see it in Passing. Um, I think that's the name of the title of the movie, Passing, on Netflix, where they're talking about really kind of covering the fact that, you know, fairer skin was always considered the most acceptable, and it couldn't be further from being so wrong, and further from the truth. My mother is very reflective of the woman that you see in the book, and then my father is very reflective of the skin tone in the father you see in the book. um, do I look at my parents and determine one is better than the other based on their skin color? No, that doesn't even make any sense. And I don't understand why we're not finally to a place where we're judging people by their character instead of their color and making assumptions. And I don't even understand what kind of assumptions you can make at this point, right?
Here we
Based on
go.
skin color, when we
How
all
about
types of character.
how about their comfort comes from something that's more similar to them? Those
Right,
people that are making that judgment, or more similar to pure, or more similar to clean than
right,
what they're trying to get away from. Whether you are black or not, that is something that's embedded in you. So while we're running around teaching unconscious bias to others, we are still
right,
dealing with unconscious bias in our own cultures, not just our cultures. Like you said, it happens in Hispanic cultures, European cultures, Asian cultures, same. Yeah.
right, right. I mean, why are they still selling brightening creams? Right? Why are they still selling this stuff? Who is buying it? And if you even look at most African cultures, like that's what they perceive as beauty cream. And I didn't even understand what it was until I got to a certain age. And to be honest with you, I was looking for, you know, vanishing or brightening cream because I hated my freckles. And I was like, how do I get rid of these things? And, you know, and that's when I started to discover, oh, like there is actually stuff on the market to do this, but it couldn't be further from, you know, beautifying yourself. It's really taking away from who you are. And then you look crazy, right? With the rest of your skin a different color, but your face is a totally different, you know, hue. And I just, it started to become a little bit of a wonderment to me. And I explored it a little more as I started to get older and look at what different cultures are doing. Look at who was it? Sammy Sosa, who's turned 4 or 5 shades
Ciao.
brighter over the years, and nobody understands why. Look at Michael Jackson, and I know we don't really know the issues there, but you know, maybe he did have vitiligo, but there was a certain part of him that didn't really accept the natural skin tone that he was born with.
So my
um
son
and
wound
it's
up
sad.
getting vitiligo, and it was he had got scratched, and then it never healed, and it kept getting bigger and whiter. So first thing I'm thinking is cancer. So we're going to the doctor and found out vitiligo is a real thing. So yes, there are
Right,
situations where these things actually happen, but there is also the Sammy Sosa situation where you're like, dude, what are you really trying to cover up? And I think we've come to
right,
a point where it's time to address what that is and why that is so harmful, not just to yourself, but for the rest of society to continue to perpetuate that that is an okay way to think, because then you start treating people that look like you, the original you, in a way
Right.
that is
Right.
damaging and harmful. And especially while we're talking to kids. But since I have you and you're an educator, I would love to get your thought on how we are, as a country, trying to
Mhm.
whitewash education. So not just our skin anymore. So now we're getting to a place where we're trying to whitewash education. I saw an article recently, and everybody know Texas is crazy, but how they are trying to repackage slavery as involuntary relocation. I mean, you're an
Yeah.
educator. You play with the
Yeah.
English language a lot. I think this is far fetched, but talk to me about that.
So, gosh, my thoughts on that is number one, how twisted is it, right, to rename exactly what it is and what it was? These aren't indentured servants. These people weren't brought here with a promise of, of a better life. They were dragged, they were sold. So I'm trying to understand why people, and I think it's because when we say the word, critical race theory or CRT, right, is the acronym for it. I think people, it sounds like to me, the fear behind it is they don't want to feel like their children are being forced to learn the ugly side of the background of this country. There's a lot of people who want to believe that America is the land of the free, the great, the beautiful, right? And so I think that when and I'm hearing different sides of it. Like white people don't want their children to feel guilty. They don't want them to come home and ask these uncomfortable questions, and they don't want to have these uncomfortable conversations that it's really just a matter of comfort. Like you were saying, people's comfort level. They want to feel comfortable, but that comfort is based in ignorance. And so not addressing it to them feels like we don't have to deal with it anymore. It's something that honestly, I don't want to deal with it. So we need to figure out ways of not dealing with it. It's putting that blanket over, the pile of poop, right? And just saying, oh well, and spraying some potpourri and saying it's not as bad as it smells. It's not as bad as it looks. And that's not addressing the issue. And the reason why we need to address these things in the classroom and not, you know, people aren't really teaching critical race theory in every classroom in all of your history or social studies courses, but they were making it a suggestion as this is how we can combat it at an early age. This is how we start the conversations when we have the minds of children that are shapeable, that we can mold them into thinking about the world in a different perspective and a different light. And I think that people think that would be damaging to them and to their children if they're not a person of color, and then the people of color who are still steeped in that ignorance of, thinking that lighter skin is better, or assimilation, or like we like to say, code switching is the way that you need to live and have a conversation with others instead of just focusing on being your best self, being a leader, understanding that all people can be leaders and can be great and can step into their greatness if they're given the tools and the opportunity. I think that we just keep focusing on the wrong things. And people are fearful. And their fear is in all types of things, right? And I think that when we address, especially at a younger age, what that is, how you can combat it, how you can be different, how you can think differently. And I think that's where we're coming from when we're saying we need to address this in the classroom instead of trying to sugarcoat it, rename it, and give it a whole new branding, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're rebranding the struggles and the negative things that America started off on. And so my thing is I just really want people to think about um how you want your children to grow up, right? What do you want your children to believe in? What do you want them to do in terms of helping our society advance. And I feel like everything that we're seeing and dealing with now is really just steps. It's pushing us backwards. We're not progressing. We're spinning our wheels on the same conversations instead of teaching our children to think and act differently.
Right back to your book, which is teaching them how to process information and draw a conclusion that leads them to making better decisions. My biggest issue with trying to alleviate Black history and slavery out of the history books is you actually don't allow even for us to learn from the lessons, because slavery did not happen on its own. There were people that look like us that
Right.
helped make that happen. If we don't have that conversation, we can't even learn the lessons of what happened and how we
Right.
played a part, and how even some of the, you know what they say, if you don't learn from history, you are in danger of repeating history. So in modern times,
And are
how
we,
are we
it's
telling,
repetition. Right.
how are we
We're seeing
starting to repeat history that we didn't really know existed and blaming everything on others? Like on some level, we have to take responsibility too. But if you don't tell the story, then we don't have the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of the past. I think our kids these days are at least wise enough to recognize mistakes of the past. But if you don't tell the story, then they just repeat the same mistakes instead of learning and doing it different, doing different.
right.
So all that being said, one of the things that's most important to me is that people get to know, like, and trust my experts and professionals on my platform. So I love that you're here. I want you to let the people know a little bit more about you. So I got a couple questions, quick fire, and I want to see your answers. Actually, I want to see if I know you well enough.
Okay.
MC Hammer or E40?
E40, of course. I remember going. We had full parties on just E40 albums, nothing else.
Hello, MC Light or Queen Latifah?
Queen Latifah, only because I've got so many connections to her. As you know, my husband proposed to me on the Queen Latifah show, and I have a deeper love for her. And when I was living in LA, I used to go to the same church as her mom.
Oh,
So
wow.
Oasis Church, I don't know if you remember, or if you've ever heard of Oasis. I don't even
Mhm.
know. I'm sure they still exist. I just don't know where they are, if they're still in the same building. But yeah, so I definitely have to say I love MC Light, but I'm definitely more of a Queen Latifah fan.
I love it. TLC or 357?
Oh, don't do that to me. Don't take away my Bay Area card, but I have to say TLC because I used to think that I was left out. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go to a party at the end of the month, and it's 90s theme, and I'm gonna be left eye. So I have to say TLC.
I love that. Eminem or G-Eazy?
Ooh, I will say just because the old head in me wants to love Eminem more.
Okay, I'll take
And then
that.
that's a plug for my husband. He's from the Detroit area, so
Okay.
shout out to Eminem.
MLK holiday or Juneteenth?
Ugh. Oh, I can't choose. I can't choose. Um,
Oh, gee.
Juneteenth. I know it's like Juneteenth was. I mean, we had so much fun. There were so many events that were happening in the Bay Area. But MLK, I've had such fond memories of going, like, riding the Freedom Train.
The
Remember
Freedom
that?
Train.
Yes, the Caltrans train turned into the Freedom Train for that one day, and then we go up to San Francisco. I got my kid yelling in the background. I apologize for the noise. He's like,
We're
"Mommy, you hear me?"
so we're from San Jose, but San Francisco or Oakland?
Oakland, for sure. I can't
Okay.
stand those hills in San Francisco. I was just home and we were riding up because my daughter was looking at the what is it, Academy of Art
Mhm,
University.
mhm.
And I'm like, this is what I don't miss about San Francisco, these hills and parking. And
The
yeah.
parking.
And I was always looking for an excuse to go to Oakland when I was younger. Always.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about you. Tell the people how they can get their hands on one of these books. And if they want to talk to you a little bit more, bring you in, let them know how they get in touch, how they stay connected, all the good stuff.
Yeah. So the website is whatisgodsfavoritecolor.com. You just spell it out just like that, all lowercase. And you will see on the website at the very bottom, there are the different ways you can get in contact, at God's Favorite Color on Instagram, and you can send me a direct message. And you can also go on Facebook, What is God's Favorite Color? Or I think it's just God's Favorite Color. So Instagram and Facebook, it is just God's Favorite Color. So please reach out to me. I'd love if you purchase the book, and just share with others about how you can use this within your own families and your own cultures to change the conversation, to shape young minds, and to, develop kids that have a better and deeper perspective of the appreciation of the things and the people around them.
I love that. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking the time, and more
And
than
thank you for
anything,
letting me come on the show. I appreciate it.
we will be getting you back because didn't I read there was 3 books?
Yes, yes. So I'm hopefully we'll have the next 2 out in the next year or so. I really wanted Danya to join me. She is such a wonderful artist, and I told her I'm not going anywhere else. I've seen so many children's authors, use different illustrators for different titles, and I want to stick with Danya because I love her artwork. And you can see her artwork at fluffyjoe.com. That's FLUFFYJO.com.
Awesome. We'll definitely be getting you back, hopefully, with this next release and continuing
Yes,
this conversation on and offline because it's very important. Know that once you are a member of the Leaders and Learners platform, you are always a part of this family. Anything you have going on, please share it with us. If you decide to go on
definitely.
tour, we want to support you. And listen, I love you. I just do.
Love you too, Tanya. And I know, Tanya, you're like, why are you being so professional with me? I'm like, because I love the professional in you, and I'm going to treat you as such. Okay. I'm going to talk to you. Unless we're having an offline conversation, you're going to be yes, ma'am, and yes, Miss Tanya. I love what you're
Listen,
doing, and
I
I
love
just
it.
love everything that you got going on. And I am a subscriber. So yes, yes, please do. Please keep me in the loop. And I will definitely do the
Absolutely.
same.
I love it. Well, listen, guys, thank you. I appreciate you. I really do. This is near and dear to me. I have 2 12-year-olds that are still going through understanding. Actually, I'm lying. The girl understands and don't care because that's what girls do. And the boy is
Yeah.
still being inquisitive because girls mature faster than boys. So I think she gets some things maybe he don't. I don't know.
Mhm,
I don't want
mhm.
to judge, but this is very timely and it's important. And I hope that everyone has the opportunity to get it, read it, share it, get another one, share it. Holiday season will be coming up sooner than you know. You got little people, they need something interesting to read, share it. It's an easy read. It's a wonderful conversation piece for young people. And she's available to be brought into any conversation. So utilize your resources, know why you're here, and continue
Yes.
to stay connected. Thank you, Miss Tene.
Thank you, Miss Tanya.
So listen, guys, serious. Get the book. I have it. I've read it. It's just a way to start a deeper conversation. Don't be afraid of these tough conversations. They're actually the things that not only help your kids grow, but they help you grow. Okay? Help you grow, help you have these tough conversations. And I don't know, you might just learn something. At least you will learn a different way to communicate with your young people. Hell, you might even learn a different way to communicate with your neighbor because some of them need a little help too. All that being said, thank you guys for showing up. I do have a copy for a listener, a viewer. So check out Sand and Shores on Instagram. I'll have something for you and a way for me to send you a copy of this book. All right. Again, thank you for showing up, and we'll see you next week. All right. Take care.